Attack on Titan was on track to being one of the most incredible stories ever told. It was a roller coaster ride of emotions that challenged me as a person time and time again with its down-to-earth take on humanity and what exactly makes us any different from the mindless monsters that the series was originally based on. Titans are large, mindless husks that do not think about anything other than eating, living solely on instinct. But what made them really scary was because no matter how different they may seem, they were eerily similar to us. They were a reflection of humanity, a spitting image of what we all would more than likely be if push came to shove, if the ends justified the means, if there was no other option. We would eat each other. This concept is so scary because it's so real, it's so intimate, it's so close. Each and every one of us could have been monsters. Some of us may have been in the past. Some of us may have not yet turned. This overwhelming familiarity of an adversary is what separated Attack on Titan from other zombie-like series like Game of Thrones. Because as the Nightwalkers themselves are very much a force to fear, they at least appear to have intelligence and some sort of motive. For the most part, Titans did not have this quality, and this is what made them the most terrifying beings and the perfect creatures for our characters to attempt to overcome. These monsters were only kept at bay by large walls, and while these walls were necessary and provided protection for our characters, the walls themselves also represented another deep fear of humanity. The fear of being trapped, the fear of being complacent, the fear of having no future. Cages can be physical, cages can be metaphorical, but the walls are both. The walls are so strong that they can keep the large titans at bay, but at the same time, they restrict humanity from being able to pursue happiness. It's no wonder why some of the characters in Attack on Titan refuse to accept these walls and dare to venture beyond them in hopes of achieving something. Even though they knew nothing of what was beyond, even if they would more than likely die, even if they lost everything, they were still willing to not only step foot outside these walls, but then put their entire being into fighting the most dangerous beings in existence time and time again. What kind of courage must it take to be willing to sacrifice everything you have for a chance at finding something that may not even exist? Does this willingness to delve into the unknown for an almost guaranteed death make you brave, or does it make you insane? Perhaps it's both. But either way, even as a bystander, I have no choice but to admire the type of person who would be willing to go beyond the walls even once, let alone twice. Perhaps it's more than admiration. It may even be envy. If I cannot become a person who is willing to lay their life on the line for a chance to escape the inescapable, at the very least I could applaud the people who are capable of doing so when they return. At the very least I could appreciate the fact that they are more than I could ever be. At the very least, I could bask in the glow they emit when they spread their wings of freedom as wide as my peripheral vision allows me to see, and they fly far beyond any vista my vision allows me to see. What kind of person must you be to look beyond the walls, beyond the titans, beyond your very being, for nothing more than a chance? Without any influence, without anyone forcing you, without any propaganda. Even with the opposite, with people telling you not to go, with people telling you to stay. What kind of person could you be? That kind of person is our main character, Eren Yeager. Eren starts out his story totally ready to spread his wings, even as a child. This is incomprehensible to me. I could never imagine volunteering to put my life on the line for something that I believe in at such a young age. But Eren was always like that. Eren always believed that because he was born, he deserved it. Because he was born, there were no walls that could detain him. There were no titans that could scare him. There were no cages. From the very first moment I learned this fact about Eren's character, I knew he would be a character that I could get behind. Not because I could relate. No, not at all. As I've made clear, I do not relate to Eren at all. In fact, I think he would consider me a coward. I could never blame him for feeling that way, and it wouldn't change the fact that I respect that he's willing to do something that I could never think of doing. But all I wanted to do was to see where this character's journey would go. All I wanted to do was watch as he flew. And I wasn't the only one. He was accompanied by great friends as well. Mikasa, while much less interested in going beyond the walls than Eren, would nonetheless go with him regardless of the risk so long as she could ensure his safety. Armin, who also wanted to fly, would also voluntarily go beyond these walls for the same exact reasons Eren wanted to go. Armin also believed that he should be free, even though he was a bit less brave than Eren. That only made him more respectable from my point of view, because while Armin had much more fear in his heart than Eren ever did, he was able to push beyond that fear when necessary and become a valuable asset to humanity because of that. From square one, we have a brilliant premise, a strong setting, a clear goal, and great characters to experience this story with. I can't think of a better start to any series than this. So where does it go from here? In the complete opposite direction you'd expect it to. This is where Isayama's writing can be phenomenal in both good and bad ways. Isayama at one point was a master of recontextualization. Recontextualization is the act of taking events, themes, characters, or even the entire story itself, and giving the audience more information about them as the story continues. The new information can be anything. It can be big or it can be small, but what the information does is change the way the audience sees something. Recontextualization is a very difficult thing to do as a writer. It requires a scary amount of faith in what your audience will understand, as well as a strong amount of groundwork in order to establish a foundation for the information to stand on. One of the best examples of recontextualization I can think of is in the Disney film Brother Bear. Now, say what you will about this movie, but one thing it did objectively well was its final recontextualization. Spoilers if you haven't seen the movie, but Brother Bear is about a young man who kills a bear for stealing his food. In the process of killing the bear, his oldest brother gets killed. This enrages him even more, and he continues to try to kill the bear. Throughout the movie, he refers to bears as monsters who are heartless, and this worldview of his gets confirmed in his eyes when his brother dies. However, due to some Disney magic, he himself becomes a bear and has to find a specific mountain in order to change back. But he doesn't know where this mountain is. Lucky for him, he randomly bumps into a small cub that knows exactly where the mountain is. So he reluctantly goes along with this cub to the mountain, but right before they arrive, the cub tells him a story. The story of how the cub got split up with his mother, whom he thinks he'll be meeting at the mountain. Turns out that this cub's mother was actually the bear that the main character had been chasing and killed. The main character finds out at the same time the audience does, recontextualizing the entire story. The bear was never trying to kill anyone, it was only trying to protect itself and its cub. What's so great about this recontextualization is it perfectly mirrors the theme of the story, which is to try to see things in another's eyes, through another perspective. If the main character had done this with the bear initially, both his brother and the bear would still be alive. Now, say what you will about this movie once again, but this recontextualization was masterful and a clear and, dare I say, perfect example of how to perform a writing exercise like this. Now, how does Isayama do recontextualization? For starters, we get more information about the monsters our characters face. We find out that people are capable of transforming into them. This complicates things, to put it mildly, because now these mindless monsters we have been dealing with have evolved into something more and become a much more nuanced and complex issue. You see, killing mindless monsters is one thing, but killing sentient human beings is entirely another. Sentient human beings that you actually know makes it even worse. How must it have felt for Eren to have realized this, to realize that the people he had eaten with, slept with, grown with, were responsible for destroying his entire family, for destroying his entire world? How much it must have hurt him to know that the person he looked up to the most was the person who looked down on him the entire time. He was only pretending to like him. He was only pretending to care. When Eren told him what happened to him, he didn't even flinch when apologizing for it happening, when he knew that he was the one responsible for it. What kind of human could do something like this? At that point, are they even human? Are they any different from the men who tried to kidnap Mikasa? Are they any different from the titans you fight? It's easy to try to ignore these questions. These are hard questions to ask. It's easier to just be angry. It's easier to scream at them, scold them, hate them, fight them, kill them. But what's difficult is to attempt to understand them. What's difficult is to learn their reasoning, because when you do that, you can no longer make the excuse that they are monsters. You can no longer separate them from yourself, because they have reasons for everything that they did, for every lie they told, for every family they destroyed, for every mother they killed. This is what elevated Eren beyond what I ever thought he could be. This is what made him more than a freedom fighter. Eren had become a person I couldn't even imagine existed. He had utterly and totally shattered my understanding of humanity at the moment he told Reiner that he had forgotten what he wanted to do to him. How could Eren have grown so much that all of that emotion, all of that hate, all of the completely justified feelings he had toward a man who actively tried to ruin his life could just vanish without a trace? How could it be so completely removed from his mind that he even forgot that he ever felt those emotions to begin with? How could you look in the eyes of the killer of your mother and accept him on such a deep level that you don't even actively want to hate him anymore, that you are incapable of hating him? What kind of person must you be to do something like this? Going beyond the walls is one thing, but this is different. This is something that is completely unfathomable to me. This is when Eren's character went even beyond what I ever thought he'd be. This is when I knew for a fact that I was witnessing a masterpiece in the making. And then it happened. My favorite moment in the story, bar none. The best example of recontextualization in history of not only this story, but in my opinion, every story I have ever experienced. Eren kneeled and cried before a child who he knew he would have to kill in order to save his people. What kind of person must you be to do something like this? What kind of person is capable of relating to people on such a deep level that he can forget all of the emotional trauma his mother's murderer caused him, yet at the same time be willing to break his own morals, his own emotional core, his own heart in order to save his loved ones? Given this context and Eren's extraordinary ability to relate to people who actually intentionally done harm to him, the mere thought of killing Ramsay, a completely innocent child who Eren knew was a good person, who already had a hard life, a person who strived to spread his wings just like he did when he was younger. The actual possibility of Eren being the one to clip his wings forever had to be the most painful moment in Eren's life. There can be no feeling that hurt him more than this. There can be no words, no actions, no monsters, no walls that challenged him more than this moment. This moment will be forever cemented in my mind as one of the best moments in the history of media. This is the moment where Eren went from my favorite character in anime to my favorite character of all time. This is where he elevated once again to yet another level that I could not comprehend, that I could not even begin to understand. Eren's walls had grown so large and so wide, and even though it was killing him, he was still, albeit reluctantly, spreading his wings, and I was more in awe to what I was witnessing than ever before. This final recontextualization of Eren's character and the story has now given us a full view. We see it all. We see both sides. We understand. We empathize. We're in total symmetry with the story. Then it was revealed that Eren was actually not this person. This entire time, this entire story was a lie. This recontextualization that I thought was one of the most impressive and perfect examples of storytelling was a lie. Eren was not flying past his walls. In fact, his walls were of his own creation. He killed his mother. He killed 80% of humanity. He killed his own character. Why? How? This whole time, since the very beginning, this character, This story was about standing in front of the walls, in front of obstacles, in front of insurmountable odds, and then climbing over them no matter what. But now it's not about that anymore. Apparently, the walls were never the issue. They were just a creation of our own interest in having an obstacle to climb over to begin with. There never were any expanded wings. They were only regular human arms reaching out for help. There never was a sight to see. There were only more walls. There never was a point to try to climb, to try to fly. It was only your delusion. It was only your dreams. You are to blame for having these dreams. You are to blame for believing they could be real. You are to blame for putting your all into them. Accept that they never existed. Accept that they never will exist. Accept that there is no going beyond because there was never a beyond to go to. Give up on any hope you may have had, as you should have done from the start. Give up on your dreams and die. This has unfortunately, unironically, and unanimously become the theme of Attack on Titan. Every major character from the start of the story adopts this theme in one way or another by the end of the story. Every decision, every detail, every message, every scene, they all lead to this one coordinate. All because of the creator of the coordinate herself, Ymir Fritz. Ymir, with all of her power, all of her knowledge, and all of her time, was incapable of coming to the conclusion that her slave owner, an unfaithful, physically and mentally abusive, attempted murderer, was not a good person. 2,000 years of being able to see the entire lifetime of every Eldian that ever lived, from the moment they were born to the moment they died, and none of those lives are even remotely similar to what she had gone through? How can you possibly expect me to believe that? How can you possibly expect me to believe that this full adult woman who had infinite knowledge was incapable of coming to a conclusion that even the most abused of the abused could have come up with? How can you possibly expect me to believe that she believed that Mikasa and Eren's dynamic was the closest thing to what she needed? How can you even expect me to believe that she was looking for Eren when Eren was standing right before her and she ignored him? Was she not waiting for him? How could she possibly have been waiting 2,000 years for Eren to show up and then ignore him when he does? Don't say it's because Zeke commands her to, because she ignores Zeke's commands later. So how is this possible? How can you expect me to take this character seriously when everything she does is a contradiction to everything she is? If she is a slave, then why does she not rise when commanded? If she is not a slave, then why does she obey for 2,000 years? If she was waiting for Eren, why does she not obey him? If she's on Eren's side, why does she betray him? If she never cared about Eren and how Eren felt, then what was the point of his speech? If she wanted Mikasa all along, then what does Eren's words matter? Was this all for show? Was this for attention? This cannot be. This cannot be possible. This is no longer a story about human beings in conflict against monsters, against themselves. This is a story about a plot device who ruined the lives of countless people, all to find out the answer that she could have found out on her own immediately upon entering paths. This is not a character, this is a scapegoat. This is a being put into the story only to desperately fill the gaping plot holes therein. This is a mockery, a disgrace. This is pathetic. And Ymir's horrible impact on the story spreads as far and wide as the paths themselves do. This is the worst form of recontextualization. It's not like Brother Bear, it's the opposite. The audience is no longer on the same page because the characters don't make sense anymore. The world doesn't make sense anymore. The themes don't make sense anymore. This change destroys the narrative down to the very core, to the fabric of the story, and corrupts it, turning it into the monster it originally feared, lamented, and dared to do battle against. It destroyed Eren completely, robbed him of everything that made him who he was, of his very identity, of his very soul. It made Eren into someone who doesn't know who he is, why he was born, or what he wants, something he never was before. And by extension, it did the same thing to the story itself. Give up on your dreams and die. Another victim of this terrible recontextualization is Mikasa. Mikasa was at one point a very strong and powerful individual, not only in the physical sense, but also mentally. After what she had gone through as a child, she had grown to be an advocate for protecting the weak. Even when Armin stood idly by as Eren died, Mikasa refused to give in to her emotions. She refused to leave him behind. She refused to give up on living. She instead decided to fight, to fly, not for herself, but in memory of Eren. What a great character she was, to lose the person closest to her and immediately after step up to the plate, if not for herself and her newfound friends, but for Eren's memory as well. If Eren had never returned from his early grave, I have no doubt in my mind that Mikasa would have done everything in her power to ensure that his death meant something and that his memory, his feelings, his goals, and his dreams lived on. But in order to make her relate to Ymir, and in order to make her kill Eren, we have to force her away from who she was. We have to make her into yet another puppet with no emotional intelligence at all. We have to have every character in the story treat her like a child. We have to have Eren treat her like trash because he believes doing so would make her want to kill him, showing just how lowly he thinks of her as a person, showing just how lowly Isayama thinks of her as a person. We have to turn her into something she never was, a damsel in distress, all so that the story lines up for Ymir's test to be successfully passed. We have to watch her behave like a monster, walking away from the weak, walking away from someone who admired her from the bottom of their heart as they lie on their deathbed alone. How could Mikasa have become this person? All so that she could kill the only person she ever loved, the only person she ever needed, for people she never knew, for reasons she didn't even agree with. And to add insult to injury, she didn't even move on from Eren like Eren wanted her to. The first time she thought Eren died, she was able to move on, even though he never told her to. But now she can't? She didn't even try to assist in achieving Eren's goal. She, again, sat at the tree with nothing in her life other than his memories. How is this honoring Eren's memory? Would he have wanted this? Would Mikasa have wanted this? Her dreams of being with Eren are gone, and now even her dreams of honoring his memory are gone too. She no longer has the emotional fortitude to do so. She was forced to give up on her dreams and die. Armin has always made his dreams clear. He wanted to go beyond the walls too, just like Eren. He believed anyone who could accept not going beyond the walls was not thinking properly, that they were illogical. Being complacent and accepting a reality that could only last so long was something that both he and Eren thought was borderline ignorant. And they both turned out to be right when the very walls that protected them shattered into pieces. The reason why Armin wanted to go beyond the walls may have been the same as Eren's reasoning, but they both had different outlooks. Eren's reasoning was because he deserved it, because it was owed to him, and Armin's reasoning was because it just looked interesting. While Armin had a positive outlook towards the walls as an obstacle to overcome, but also a future to strive for, Eren had a negative outlook on them. He began to resent them, and this resentment manifested itself in many different ways, which ultimately led the two on different paths that lead to the same coordinate, but clash with each other to get there. This made sense. Armin was always more pessimistic but hopeful, while Eren was always more optimistic and positive. Armin believed that the sights were possible. Eren believed that the sights belonged to him. that he was owed them, and neither of them were wrong, but Eren grew to understand what it took to get what he wanted, and grew to understand the incredible distance he had to climb in order to get over the walls. Armin instead preferred to hope that the walls would collapse on their own if he met the halfway point. This is where the ideology clashed the most, as Eren believed there was no future without fighting. Armin believed in humanity. Armin believed in converting people to his ideology, believed in a different form of flight, but to the same destination. Neither of these two are wrong, but how did Armin come to this conclusion? Before he learned about the ocean, before he became a monster, Armin was fully aware that his humanity had to be sacrificed if he were to ever fly. He was fully aware that sacrificing his comrades, his people, his home, and even his own life was necessary for the sights to be seen by anyone, even without him. He was ready to die by that logic, and he almost did. But after that, something changed. He was no longer willing to sacrifice. He was no longer willing to do what needed to be done. He was no longer willing to fly if it meant he had to launch himself off a pile of corpses. Again, this is totally understandable, just not for him. When did he change so much? How did he change so much? Erwin Smith was the person he wanted to be like the most. You see it get referenced time and time again throughout the story. Yet, he knew for a fact that Erwin would always be willing to make sacrifices if necessary for victory. Armin was willing to play by these rules, and he did it very well for a while, but then he quit. He changed the game. He changed the rules. He changed his ideology. He changed himself. I only ask why. What made him change so much? What made him go from this to this? Regardless, what Armin changed into was nothing more than a hypocrite. Now he was not only willing to fly himself, he also wanted to tear down Eren's flight as well. Even before Eren ever mentioned doing a full rumbling, Armin, his best friend, considered sacrificing him. The man who put his life on the line to save him. The man who would have died for him without a second thought. The man who was always there for him. Armin was willing to kill him simply because he believed that he was flying in the wrong direction. Would Eren ever consider such a thing? If the shoe were on the other foot, if the table was turned, would he have ever thought of killing his friend who would have done anything to make sure he was safe? Who had begged for his life, who had always believed in him, who had already effectively died for him? I don't believe Eren would have done that, but Armin did. And again, that was well before he knew that Eren would rumble. After he found out that Eren would do a 100% rumbling, Armin was willing to die to stop him, even though he knew his island would most likely be destroyed immediately after, even though he knew the likelihood of stopping Eren was slim to none, even though he knew he may never be able to see the sights, that he may never be able to achieve his dream, and neither would any of his people. Armin was still willing to give up. He was not willing to abide by the lessons he learned from Erwin. He was not willing to let go of his humanity. He would rather give up on his dreams and die.
Zeke had a dream for sure. The dream to see Eldia gone for good so that there would be no more Titans. A noble dream, albeit a bit one-sided. But you really have to ask, why did Zeke want this dream in the first place? What did he want to come of the removal of Titans? Well, the easy answer would be to end all conflict. What would a full rumbling do? End all conflict. So basically, Zeke is just a sore loser. He got his dream to come true, just not in the way he wanted it to. He got the end of the conflict that he always wanted, and at the point where he decided to die, he was basically guaranteeing the possibility of conflict continuing, going against his entire reason for having this dream in the first place. This is all because Armin told him that the small moments in life matter most. Something that Zeke was already fully aware of, even as a child when he told his parents not to risk their family over the rebellion. When he then sacrificed those parents to save his grandparents. When he spent time with Xavier throwing a baseball back and forth. When he threw that same baseball to Eren. Zeke was already fully aware of the importance of these moments and these feelings, assuming anything less is simply an insult to his character. Even if he weren't aware of them, How would ending the rumbling change anything? All that would do is, again, guarantee the possibility of future conflict. He had already stood by and let so many people die from the rumbling. What's a couple more at this point? There really is no answer because Isayama did not think this far ahead. He did not plan for Zeke's story to end like this, but he had to stop the rumbling for reasons unknown. He had to give up on his dreams and die. The Owl is an even bigger perpetrator of this offense because he always wanted Eldia to reign supreme, even to the point where he was willing to sacrifice the lives of other Eldians in order to gain favor with Marley. He actually did small-scale rumblings in a figurative sense, so him wanting to stop the rumbling is completely hypocritical. And Grisha helping out, just extension goes to Grisha as well, because Grisha gave Eren the Titan even after he knew that Eren would rumble. So how can he possibly go against Eren now when he didn't want to go against Eren in the past? All of these characters gave up on everything that they stood for. They gave up on all of their dreams, all of their motivations, all of their essences, and they died. Was this really the take-home message of Attack on Titan? Was this really what I was supposed to learn from this story that I had followed for nearly a decade? Well, if that's the case, I refuse. I will not give up on my dreams and die. I will not allow this ending nor anything else to take away from the lessons and the memory that this story that I fell in love with has taught me. And I will carry these memories with me as I try my damnedest to build up the courage to one day stretch my own wings and spread them wide enough to fly beyond every wall, whether they be the work of an architect or my own doubts, and whether I soar to the clouds and bear witness to all the sights in the world or crash on the ground, breaking my spine on impact, I will do so with a hearty smile on my face that will never fade, even after I die. Thank you for this lesson, Attack on Titan. Thank you for this lesson, Isayama. I will never forget it, and I will never forget you. Thank you all for supporting me throughout all this time. This is my final video on Attack on Titan. I will never discuss this series ever again from this day forward. Feel free to unsubscribe if you're here only for Attack on Titan content. I do understand, but it's over now. I will never talk about this series ever again. From now on, if I do upload anything else in the future, it will be about completely different series and other stories that I want to talk about, as well as my own series. And if you guys don't know, I do have my own manga. It's called Deuteronomy. I'll be linking it in the description. You can read it for free. Give it a chance. Let me know what you think. And there will be more chapters coming out soon. We're on chapter 7 now. So yeah, I really do appreciate you guys. Thank you guys for stopping by. It's been a great time getting to know you. Really appreciate all the support. Love you guys. Peace.